Good morning, everybody. We'll get started in just a minute. Welcome to the Tribal College Research listening session that we're having today. We're very appreciative that you were able to join. We have interpreters with us today, and we are also recording this particular program. What we would like to do is start out with a brief introduction of the Tribal College Grant Research Program. We're going to talk a little bit about who we are, and then we're going to go into some general questions about this program to get your feedback on how we would like to potentially incorporate it into the request for applications that will be published in 2023. So my name is Erin Riley, and I am a national program leader at NIFA, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, and I've been a program leader here since 2017. And I will turn it over real quick to Janice Woodard to introduce herself, then Prali Chitnis.
Hi, everyone. My name's Janice Woodard, and I'm a national program leader. I am recently hired almost 2 months, and I come from Little Priest Tribal College originally.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Prali Chitnis, and I am a program specialist working with the tribal programs.
And hi, everyone. My name is Aris Stopp. I am also a program specialist, and I work very close with this tribal group. So thank you.
So we'll move on to the next slide. The Tribal College Research Grant Program's purpose and priorities are to develop leadership skills, prepare students to be globally competitive, and also to increase the institutional capacity of the 1994 institutions in traditional ecological knowledge, research, education, and extension as it pertains to the 1994s and tribal communities. Next slide. There are research collaboration requirements for the Tribal College Research Grant Program. It includes 4 potential options to partner for the TCR GP program. You need to partner with an 1862 or an 1890 land grant university. The Agriculture Research Service is an eligible entity, a non-land grant college of agriculture, or a McIntyre-Stinnes Cooperative Forestry School that is receiving McIntyre-Stinnes funding. There are currently 2 1994s that are receiving McIntyre-Stinnes funding, that is Leech Lake Tribal College and Salish Kootenai Tribal College. Next slide. Currently, there are 4 project types. There is the area of expertise, which has a maximum of 500,000. This project type is to increase and create a center of expertise within the 1994s who have already done research in a particular field or received a regular grant that was a little smaller from potentially National Science Foundation, NIFA, maybe another research agency or foundation. But this area of expertise is to bolster and really help create a center of expertise at the 1994. The New Discovery Grant is a regular grant opportunity where you come in with a project. It's not as big as an area of expertise, but it still needs to have a very good research foundation. The maximum for the New Discovery is 220,000 per over a potentially 3-year period. There's also the applied faculty or community project type, which is where you have a faculty member doing work directly in the community and creating a research project. The maximum for this program is $95,000 per year. And the fourth project type is a student-led, traditionally ecological knowledge research project. So a student would be doing TEK, and the maximum amount of this project type is $60,000 per over a potentially 3 to 4 year period. Next slide. So what we'd like to do is open up for discussion the Tribal College Research Grant Program, and what we're going to have some discussion points that we're going to bring up, and we would like you all to put information in the chat box as much as you can with as much detail. And we're also going to open this up for general discussion while we are recording this. We will try to take notes as much as we possibly can, but we would very much like to have you all tell us in writing or have a conversation to offer up some ways that we can build this program so that it affects the 1994 communities and it affects the Tribal College Research Grant Program in a way that will help build your capacity. Next slide. So we're going to go ahead and start this discussion. I'm going to turn my video off. And the first point of topic that we would like to discuss is finding new ways to help build research capacity at the 1994s. If someone would like to start out by putting something in the chat box or would like to come off mute, what are some ways that you all would like to offer up to help build research capacity at the 1994s? I will give some examples to maybe help the discussion. Oh, we have one. Allow construction. So Brian put a message in the chat box, allow construction. Are there other, would anybody, funding, Steve Yanni put in the chat box, funding for a full-time research scientist at each 1994. Steve, could you elaborate on that a little bit? Good, we're getting some good ones. Would you be willing to come off mute and elaborate a little bit?
Sure, Erin. If we're being honest in our situation here in terms of capacity, human resource capacity to be successful with research projects, we're relying on a very, very limited number of faculty who have even more limited time to be engaged in significant research activities. In other words, our faculty, even if they come to us with experience and credentials to do research, they're here primarily as undergraduate instructors and undergraduate advisors, and research certainly falls somewhere much further down the line of priorities for them in terms of how they spend their time. You know, at an 1862, we have faculty members who have research interests and research capabilities, who have release time to do research. They might have research appointments. That would be not the case at most of the institutions that I'm aware of at the 1994 level. So the belief that our faculty are going to be able to be engaged in a very significant way in a research agenda is just not the reality for us, unfortunately. I think rather than trying to entice faculty members to periodically engage in research projects that we submit and have funded, we'd probably be better off hiring individuals with research capacity, the credentials, the interest, the experience to lead a research agenda that they might be able to be the principal investigator on projects, or they might be able to be more involved in developing and submitting proposals that would support the research agenda that each institution determines. And of course, the field of study for that research scientist would be dependent upon what the interests of that particular institution might be. It might be forestry in one school, it might be health promotion in one school, it might be sustainable agriculture and food systems somewhere else, but certainly that could be determined by each institution. So it just seems to me that in the long run, rather than pursuing shorter term small research proposals that we're trying to find folks in our institutions to lead, if we were able to hire a research scientist with significant capacity to lead the research agenda, I think, at least in our situation here, that would probably build more capacity for us in the long term in terms of pursuing research opportunities. Thanks, Erin.
Thank you, Steve. I also see Dennis Dye has written promote direct, frequent, and meaningful engagement between the 1994s and collaborating institutions, ARS, LGUs, etc. Dennis, would you like to elaborate on your comment?
Sure, Erin, thanks. And my comments are based on my experience as a project director for a recent TCRAE project, so area of expertise project. And my proposal or project was or did have the requirement to include one of the required collaborating institutions outside of 1994's. So, but I should mention that I do support going forward, possibly doing away with that as an absolute requirement. I think there's a good rationale for that. But nevertheless, our project did have that collaboration, and I think there are a lot of benefits that can come from partnership with some of the major research organizations and universities in the country. But one of the challenges in realizing the full benefits and potential of that collaboration was factors that inhibited regular, frequent, significant interaction. And the number one challenge is distance. That is, our project, we're collaborating with a great team at NMSU, but they're 4 hours away. So what we found is that our students really lost out on opportunities to really learn and interact with researchers on an ongoing basis, just very occasionally. And I think that's one of the motivations and of these kinds of partnerships is to expose our students to research professionals and career paths in science and research. So I think we need to, or NIFA needs to look at how to facilitate really ongoing meaningful interaction so that we can realize those benefits. And for example, one way may be by supporting visiting researcher programs where there's actual funding and encouragement or for professional researchers from our partner organizations to come and spend time on our campus. So significant amount of time, maybe 1 week, 3 or 4 times a year, or a longer period, whatever could be done to really make sure that our students are engaged with these partners. So I think that's my main thought to start with, Erin. Thanks.
Thank you, Dennis. Another comment from Jessica Fish is to train research scientists or funding to train research scientists. Jessica, would you like to say something, or you can go ahead and come off mute?
Yeah, that was just to add to being able to hire funding or to have funding for full-time research scientists, to have the funding to be able to start training our own. A lot of tribal colleges are 2 or maybe 4-year programs, we don't necessarily have research scientists on hand, much as we would like to, but we also don't have the ability to start training them up from our students.
Great, thank you. And Jessica, while you're off mute, you also stated remove the collaboration requirement for research grants, especially on anything that involves traditional knowledge. This information has been abused by outside groups before and isn't something that would be necessarily want to share with other institutions. Do you want to comment on that while you're off mute?
Absolutely. So I think we've all heard the horror stories of someone coming in to do research and declaring that the traditional knowledge that they had researched was now their intellectual property. That happens over and over again, and it's still a very touchy subject, as it should be. So one of the things we have to be cognizant of is who we're giving this information to and what are they going to use it for. So to say that we have to partner with an outside organization sometimes is prohibitive just to what subjects we can research.
Great, thank you for your comments. So Courtney stated there is a need to have funds that help renovate spaces for more research spaces dedicated fully to research and not a combination with classes. Courtney, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, so what we find over here is that we're able to grow these research projects and go forward, but we're still limited by sharing, a classroom space. So you set up your stuff for filtering and everything else, and then you have to tear it all down for a classroom to come in there. And, if there was the ability to renovate a classroom in order to accommodate a research focused area where we could set up equipment and experiments and leave them going without worrying about needs of a classroom, that would be huge. That would be a huge benefit to us.
These are great. And I love that you all are utilizing the chat box. This is exactly what we were hoping for. We are going to be capturing all of this information and synthesizing it. We also have a website set up directly for this listening session that you'll be able to see the notes that we capture from this. We're going to need to move on to discussion topic 2. So next slide, Prali. What we'd like to discuss is exploring ways to ensure that tribal college research programs are achieving the goals of the program. So right now, in terms of the goals that we went over at the beginning, do you all think that we could expand the tribal college research grant program to achieve the goals? Do you feel as though the goals of the intention of the tribal college research program are being met? Do you feel like there's a way we could expand the program for communities that you're working in to make it benefit those people? So the goals, Prali, do you want to go back up real quick to slide number 2? The goals that are in the RFA are to develop leadership skills, prepare students to be globally competitive, and to really increase the capacity of the traditional ecological knowledge, the research, as well as education and extension at the 1994 community. So that's where we are focusing. That's the purpose and priorities of the program. Let's go ahead back to topic question number 2 and see if you all think we could add anything to help hit the goals of what the program is and the purpose and priorities. Misty, I see that your hand is raised. Do you want to go
Hey,
ahead
Erin,
off mute? Hey, Misty, I
Can-
can hear you now.
You
Great.
can hear me now?
Yep.
I was wondering if there was any discussion at NIFA about 2+2 or 4+4 programs that are longer, so more than the 2 to 3 years that the Tribal College Research Program mostly funds, where you can have students that matriculate from undergraduate into graduate school, or from community college into a 4-year degree plan. So kind of those longer ones, if we're trying to introduce Indigenous leadership or students into the programs like that. And then also as part of that, a lot of times I think the tribal colleges are underserved and compared to some of other Research One schools in terms of things like library resources, where we can't access journal articles, where we can't provide our students that type of research pedagogy that you might have at a larger university. And so sometimes these 2+2 or 4+4 programs can get researchers and students access to programs that they have at larger universities.
Could we explore something you said, Misty, in regards to access to journal articles? Because I know this is one that has come up previously. Would that be something that we could add as a something that would be in for a to hold a license that could share the 1994?
Erin, you sound a little bit choppy. I'm
Erin,
sorry.
yes.
Elaborate on all
Erin, you're cutting out a little bit.
We lose her completely.
We may have actually lost her. However, so getting back to, I think what Erin was trying to get feedback on was including things such as library resources, other access to journals, those types of things within the program.
I apologize, my internet kicked me off.
There she is.
It sounds like it sounds like you did a good job of kind of talking a little bit about that. Misty, I was just asking if you could elaborate on the journal article, whether that's something that you would want us to incorporate into the RFA.
Yeah, I guess one of the things is that we've tried multiple times to get journal access, and it's prohibitively expensive. And Heidi has a good point that some of our researchers need journals before the RFA. And so it's kind of a stopgap system of just like emailing people who have access to journals and being like, can you get this journal paper for me? And it's really hard. It's really hard at the tribal colleges. I know that some other community colleges have this issue as well. I don't really know the answer to it. It's something that I think needs to be addressed, especially within tribal colleges. But when I say prohibitively expensive, some of the quotes that we got were anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 a year.
Yeah, and that's on the cheap side.
Yes.
Great. Are there other comments? I apologize. I got kicked off. Are there other comments on ways to ensure that tribal college research program are achieving the goals? Would anybody like to come off mute? Okay,
Sorry, I do have a comment for that one. I think there is a gap between what NIFA thinks we have as far as resources for these research grants versus what we actually have. If you want us to always have a PI or a PD who's got previous research experience, or a PhD who is available to help this research project, you're limiting the number of people that can even try to apply. Because there are people who are thrilled, would love to do a research project that might not have that experience.
great comments, Jessica. Great comments. Do you mind putting those in the chat box as well? I think those are exceptionally important.
Oh, I did actually. It just kind of got lost there.
Okay,
Excellent.
I have one quick questions. Like
Yes.
so, like for applying the grants, so some grants like for tribal, I have seen like you need to be at the assistant or associate professor level, like for at least not crossing the 3 years. So that also decreases the applications when we are submitting the grants. Though we have PhD, but we are not in the position, we can't apply for the grants without having without collaborating with the other institutions.
Great. Thank you for those. We make sure we have off mute.
Tom, I
if you-
see you have your
Yeah.
hand raised. Do you have?
Okay,
you have
yeah.
something?
I thought that's what she said. I just
I
didn't
think
know
so
if it was
too.
choppiness. Okay, yeah, just going back to Jessica's point, I think absolutely 100%, but also accepting and, allowing other forms of knowledge. So like, traditional knowledge holders, having them being able to step in place of those PhDs to truly collaborate and value, the strength and the power that resides within, the communities that we work in, coming from the indigenous knowledge side of things. So.
That's great, Tom. Did you happen to put something, just something brief in the chat for that? We're trying to get.
Yep, I can do that.
In both. Okay, thank you so much. Just so we have a note. Okay, not sure if Erin is, she might have had to get off. Were there any other comments for discussion topic 2?
Hi, this is Misty Peacock again. I have one more comment. I know that the NSF Tribal College program does a specific meeting once a year or every other year where you can have a researcher apply for funds to hold this meeting, where it's only researchers that hold grants within that program. And I know that Falcon has that kind of wider meeting every year, but it would be really nice if we could have just a meeting within our tribal college research community for that as well as an option. And that might hold people more responsible for achieving the goals of their research grants in that program.
Thank you, Misty, for your comment. Did you happen to make a note of that in the chat? Just something short.
I will do that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would like to make a comment. Like even in NSF, like National Science Foundation research capacity building program. So like when even for the tribal, like if you have a PhD, but if you are not in the position of like assistant or associate professor less than 3 years, then you are not you can't apply for that even for research capacity building grant. Then you have to collaborate with other universities like 1962 or 1990 or 1862 universities. So like if there is any way that we can minimize, like having a PhD can apply for the grant, that will I don't know, that will reduce the barrier or something. I don't know, just my thoughts.
Thank you for your comments, Amit. I appreciate that. I apologize for my bad internet connection, but I'm glad we've got a great tribal team to pick up for my shortcoming of the internet. So would anybody else like to make a comment before we move on to discussion topic number
Erin?
3? Yes,
Hey,
Shirley.
this is Shirley. I just wanted to piggyback on that comment about a PI that was a traditional ecological knowledge holder. I mean, if the grant was about leadership, I would like to see something parallel for that for, I don't know why our own clan members, I mean, most tribes have some kind of clan system that is a traditional way of leadership. And I wish that there were more opportunities to explore that. What were traditional leadership models and restoration and reclamation of those? And so in a situation like that, I know a PI could be, you consider having a PI that was a clan leader doing that work.
Right. Thank you. Would anybody else like to comment or put a comment in the chat box before we move forward? Okay, we're going to move to discussion topic 3. And I'm going to put in the chat box so we can delineate where we're at with your comments. What NIFA can do to increase the leadership skills, knowledge, and qualities that are necessary to prepare students to be globally competitive for agriculture and related careers in the private sector, government, and academia. That could be tribal government as well. So we would like to discuss this topic. So how can we increase leadership skills? And I think, Shirley, your comments were heard, and I think we can definitely work with you on those comments. How can we increase the leadership skills, knowledge, and qualities that are necessary to prepare students to be globally competitive for agriculture and related careers in the private sector, government, and academia? Would anybody like to come off mute? And what we mean by globally competitive is that you have students that can compete with other, in terms of finding jobs with other nations. So if you would like to come off of mute and make a remark or put something in the chat box with your ideas, does anybody have any comments on how they think NIFA could potentially do this?
Hi, Erin. This is Teferi. Can you hear me?
Hi, Teferi. Yes.
Recently, I had some conversation after the Falcon 22 meeting. I had some discussion with ARS colleagues, and I found out that in a Morris, Minnesota unit, they used to have internship, very successful internship, engaging with the tribal programs. So is there a way to continue that internship working with ARS scientists? That will help, to train students by bringing them to ARS locations.
Great, thank you for those comments, Teferi. And what I'm hearing is add more internships and really specify internships in the RFA. Misty, I see that you have added in your comments RU programs with direct links to ARS or industry partners. Okay, great. Would you like to talk about that a little bit? I'm also seeing more student access to experiential learning and research activities.
Erin, hi, this is Misty. Yeah, I'm agreeing with what the previous commenter said, is those kind of hands-on experiences with ARS or industry partners who are, or natural resources divisions at tribal nations who are working on these types of projects are really, really important for getting the students to even know about the types of jobs that are available, and it takes them beyond what they can learn in school into the competitive agriculture or aquaculture career section. In my, at least that's what I feel that our students could benefit from.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? I see there are some comments in the chat. Is there anybody else that would like to add anything? I'm seeing a lot of experiential learning opportunities. Would anybody like to elaborate on that? Roxanne?
Erin, this is Dennis. I could just share one thought.
Sure.
I think what is key is that we enable the maximum number of our students to get experience outside of our campus bubbles. And that's the biggest challenge, because there are internship opportunities. There's a whole array of them, but it's one student here, one student there. We have to look at kind of more broader, impactful ways so we can benefit a larger number of students. And I think NASA has some examples of really proactive engagement activities with colleges and TCUs, especially in engineering, that might be examples of this. But I think the key is getting our students exposed, and I think that's going to depend a lot, at least to hit a larger number of students. It's going to depend a lot on bringing these outside organizations to our campuses, and not just depending on us sending a student here, a student there, across the state or wherever. So that's what I'm really interested in. And how can we bring a greater presence of USDA, of ARS, of USGS, of Forest Service onto our campuses? And USGS, I just saw an example. USGS just established a new cooperative research center on the campus of I think it's University of Michigan or another Michigan university. TCUs need to look at that model where we bring the outside world in science and research into our campuses more than just depending on sending individual students out. I think that would help.
Great comments. Thank you.
Erin, again, this is the very appreciative what Dennis said. That is also very important. And another thing also is bringing faculty and students and spend time in our lab, for example. As a matter of fact, we had some conversations with Dennis. By the way, Dennis, I'm working on what you requested on the UAV side. So I have very important information to share with you very soon. So you could work with our Stillwater unit or Stoneville in Mississippi unit, who are very much, could assist from ARS aspects. So bringing faculty and students also will be an excellent approach to take in and spend maybe a month or two during the summer, spend time in ARS laboratory. We can identify laboratories and work with you. So in natural resource or other areas, as a matter of fact. So we're open for that kind of discussion. So
great.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Courtney, I just want to read a comment that you made. Focus on getting students prepared via talking about how to advocate for themselves as they consider those fields. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that we have found, and I think it's kind of reflected too about what Heidi is saying about students not really wanting to go elsewhere for these internships, is that for one thing, there's not a relationship built with these areas that the students feel comfortable, and a lot of times these bigger institutions or agencies or whatever, they are, our students go in and they don't know how to talk and ask for what they need, and to kind of push back on things that, to put it bluntly, is maybe unintentional institutional racism, and they don't feel like they have a voice. And so instead of going forward, they kind of just pull back, and sometimes it causes them to just drop out. And so I think, ideally, I would say the way to do this would be, and people have mentioned this, bringing these people into the tribal college to create that type of really strong relationship, because it ends up changing the institution a little bit. There's more understanding, but our students need to be able to have a voice when they go, and helping them find that voice, I think, is very important as they go forward. So
Thank you, Courtney. Steve, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just to follow up on Courtney's comments, it may not be real popular to look at it this way, but in many ways, my experience has been that when we bring collaborators into our research projects, and sometimes we're forced to do that, I recognize that, but that's what creates exposure between our students and those professionals, either at the 1862s or at ARS or any other agency that we might be partnering with. It's been my experience that our students who have been involved in research projects where we have brought research scientists into our institutional projects from other areas are much more likely to graduate, go on and seek advanced degrees, and be eligible for employment, either professionally back in their communities or with federal agencies or in the private sector. So to me, that's one of the benefits of having that requirement, at least at the $500,000 level, to have a partnership with some of these other agencies or institutions that provide models, provide new energy and new people outside of the campus community, but still have them come to our campuses and interact with our students. So those are just some of my observations.
Thank you, Steve. Would anybody else like to comment on this discussion topic before we move to discussion topic 4?
Hi, yeah, my name is Brent. I'm at Leech Lake Tribal College. Kind of fly on the wall here because I'm not that familiar with these programs, but I do see that most of the comments recently are about, the challenges students have, especially relocating, and I just want to kind of echo those comments that students are either unwilling or unable to relocate most of the time. And some of the other comments related to housing issues and childcare issues are all certainly in play as far as the challenges our students face. And honestly, upfront funding doesn't always solve those. It helps for sure, but having money for housing doesn't create housing, and having money for childcare doesn't create childcare. So I don't have any suggestions, but I'm just saying that I don't know what the solutions to those are. But they're deep problems that can't be just always rectified up front with just more money, although that's certainly a step in the right direction. And I just wanted to echo that.
Thank you for your comments, Brent. I see some other people are putting information in the chat. That's fantastic. Please keep doing that. We'll be capturing that chat message. We're going to move on to discussion topic number 4. And discussion topic number 4 is what NIFA can do to increase the number of proposals in traditional ecological knowledge. Would anybody like to comment on this particular discussion topic? We
Can I
currently
comment
have,
comment
Yes.
on that, Erin?
yes, Erin.
Potentially, if there is some a postdoc position in these areas, identifying and providing resources, identify the topics related to traditional ecological knowledge and provide some funding, for postdocs to work on those topics on the tribal, in collaboration with the tribal institutions.
Thank you for that comment.
Hi, this is Heidi. I'm sorry, I completely disagree. In that, like, having someone from the outside who's a postdoc come into a tribal community and work on, researching traditional ecological knowledge, if that's what the other person was just advocating for, I don't think so. I don't think that's a good idea. You need people in the community, from the community, working with the community all the time to even gain the trust, and then to be a safe repository, I think, for that knowledge, because that's traditional ecological knowledge, and lots of traditional knowledge isn't for publication. And I mean, that might even be an issue with, NIFA's goals and this global minded sort of, when you do your reports, you say, how many publications did you have? And, where did you publish, and how many presentations? And it's like, there's value just in working in the community and documenting this for the community, or do whatever the community wants to research. I mean, and I think you need to have, people who aren't necessarily postdocs, but people who maybe you have a research advisor or something, to help them like navigate the whole, I don't know, sorry, but like the colonized NIFA landscape of meeting the benchmarks and meeting this and that and publishing, and helping them understand some of the goals that, like, how to meet what NIFA might want, but also give them, elevate their voices, help them do the research, even if they're not, publishing or doing presentations or having a global impact, because traditional ecological knowledge is local. I mean, sorry, I'm going on, but I'll stop now.
Thank you, Heidi. I see that there's some great comments in the chat box. Misty, can you talk about the rolling submissions real quick?
There are, I think this is also from the NSF Teacup program, and sometimes they will have like a submission window open for about 4 months for a specific project, and it'll be open every year for that time period. I find that sometimes working with students, if this also is part of the, not just the traditional ecological knowledge, but the student research grant opportunities, it takes longer than that 3 to 6 weeks from start a proposal idea to completion of grants.gov proposal submission. And if there was an opportunity for kind of the long goal for researchers who are working with traditional ecological knowledge to have that time to build those relationships, to have direct input either from students or ecological knowledge holders as co-Is on that proposal, that would be really helpful.
Thank you, Misty. I see
Erin,
a few comments. Yes,
this is-
go ahead, Virgil.
Hi. there needs to be, I think the tribal colleges have to take the lead in working with the tribes on this issue of ecological traditional knowledge being studied as to what the parameters are on, like what Heidi mentioned about publishing and ownership. I don't think the outside community doesn't understand it about traditional knowledge, and that how broadly the owners of that knowledge wants that distributed or even published or even studied. There is a tendency in the 1862 community that when they research something, they own it. And we're quite frankly working through that situation right now, where there was some serious misunderstandings about processes. And we hopefully will come out of it with a strong agreement and understanding with our partner institutions on how this type of work lays out and where the ownership lies. It doesn't lie with the lead research institution, 1862. It lies with the original source of the information. And I don't think there's very many of those agreements in place between tribal colleges and their 1862 counterparts. Does anybody out there know if their institution has one?
Hi, this is Heidi at Chitnis Community College. We have a tribal, it's a food safety outreach program grant that we just got through NIFA, but we're the lead institution. The 1862 is the sub-award, and they're helping us create micro credentials, and part of it includes traditional knowledge, because it's like food preservation and traditional knowledge. Sorry to the interpreter that I talk really fast. But we put into our sub-award agreement, like we wrote it in, we edited it based, from their standard language to add that, we would have like proprietary ownership of any knowledge, traditional knowledge, or, we would be able to say what could or could not be shared by the 1862. And I don't remember exactly how we worded it, but we put that in there, but that was upfront and not kind of an after the fact thing. But I because we haven't had a traditional knowledge relationship with NDSU or 1862 in the past. So, but having that going in, we were able to put that in there, and they signed it. So it's there. Yeah.
What did you do about settlement of disputes? Did you look at tribal court versus state court? And what did the 1862 respond?
I don't even know. I'm sorry, who am I talking to? Maybe we can email later.
Yeah, Virgil Dupuy with Salish Kootenai College.
Okay, all right.
But that jurisdictional component is important as well, because I don't think the state, I don't know if a state institution would ever subject themselves to tribal court jurisdiction.
Yeah.
I can speak to that super quickly because I have a similar experience. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but just got done putting together a contract for sub-awards from a similar, actually it was, a NIFA one with University of Wisconsin-Madison and University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Similar situation, both contracts, one, the person decided just to go it alone, so they got a waiver through their Wisconsin AG to work with us as far as dispute resolution, or it was venue, right? So they just got a waiver and they're kind of on their own. So if anything happens, we're going to pull that individual into tribal court. The other one, they decided to go silent, but I guess after talking with our college's legal team, they said because our sovereign immunity is still in the contract, that's kind of the piece that we can fall back on. But it's definitely not a recommended best practice. So yes, absolutely, Virgil, I hear what you're saying. We're kind of in the stage of looking at our contracts and trying to, incorporate that and make that very explicit when it comes to subawards and things like that for venue. So.
Tom, thank you.
It would be nice if NIFA made that a requirement in the RFA that they had like a contract that spelled out, how would intellectual property rights of the tribe be dealt with, and, a resolution from the tribal council as well, so that you can be assured that I have seen tribal colleges submit projects that I know the band knew nothing about. I was the environmental director for a band that found out what a tribal college was doing, and we knew nothing about it. We were doing the same work. And so we ended up collaborating. But so I know what happens. But if you made those stipulations as part of the RFA, you might, I would prefer to see that as a band member myself, because this traditional ecological knowledge stuff really bothers me. It really does not belong outside of our community unless for some reason we choose to share that, because we've lost so much already. We just really can't afford to lose more.
Shirley, would you be willing to put your remarks in the chat box?
Yeah, I can type something up later. My dyslexia. I don't like
Or
writing
just
in a
send
chat
it to me
box.
personally? Or just
Yeah,
send it to me personally,
absolutely.
because I think those are very, very good comments.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So we're going to move on. Oh, go ahead, Tom. I see you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch super quickly on this discussion topic. I think in order to get to this place that I think the discussion topic is alluding to, we first need to have the safeguards and the frameworks in the communities, and that's going to come from the community, right? So putting together data sovereignty, indigenous data sovereignty models that protects what can be shared, what can't be shared. How is this going to impact and further tribal sovereignty priorities, right? And that goes across the board, not just traditional ecological knowledge. That's, any research project that is dealing with indigenous data or tribal data. So I think there's some building blocks and some foundation stuff that we need to put in place for, each tribal college or community or whoever it may be, in order to get to this point where we're starting to pump out proposals that center traditional ecological knowledge. Okay, I'll shut up.
These are super comments. This is exactly what we wanted to get at. I appreciate this immensely. And I did see that you put that in the chat box, so that's appreciative. If you want to elaborate on it, I'm happy to have a conversation as well. Let's move on to discussion topic number 5. And what NIFA can do to increase research capacity at the 1994s. So this is similar, but when we talk about capacity, capacity has a lot of different definitions. It could be infrastructure, which I know we've touched on. It could be capacity is also the ability to have release time. Capacity is the knowledge of someone who has the ability to teach the courses. And there may be some things that we reiterate here that have been said before, but that's okay. So what could NIFA do to increase, or what NIFA can do to increase research capacity at the 1994s? Would anybody like to start out with a comment or put something in the chat box? Misty.
Hi, Erin. I have a strong opinion about this. I don't know if it's possible, but if NIFA could really support the researchers who are applying for these funds by talking about the good work that we do to our presidents, to our administrative team, to AHIC, to people who can then support us on our campuses, would be really helpful, whether that's an email or a phone call to the president or something like that. It sounds kind of silly, but it's almost like lobbying our own colleges and just letting them know how important it is to the students and to the researchers to give us leave from teaching, or to help find ways to build research space so that we have the capacity to do these research projects and grants. I think that we all wear a lot of different hats at the research colleges. Thank you.
Thanks, Misty. Would there be a way to maybe do some sort of workshops that you could add to the RFA? Misty, do you think?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. That would probably be helpful. I do think that, as Jessica said, it's really getting the ear of the presidents at the college. And I don't know if you can maybe, I know they have those AHIC meetings, bring AHIC as a supporter of that, of the NIFA projects, or maybe sometimes it feels like we're working in a bubble, I think, as researchers. And so if we could have a way that we could really show the colleges or our administrative team the work that we're doing would be helpful.
And this kind of goes back to what National Science Foundation does with their, that you were talking about with their annual meeting where they bring everybody in.
It does, yeah.
Great, thank you. So I see there's some comments in the chat box. Funding for full-time research scientists or the development of full-time research scientists at the tribal colleges and support costs. Are there other comments that people would like to add to this?
Yeah, this is Jessica. For us, the capacity we really need to build first is our students. We need more students who are able to participate in programs, who are able to study and devote time to studying. But in order to do that, we need to start addressing the problems that they have, like housing issues, like childcare. And we've talked about this before, but a monetary payment isn't what we need there. We need to find more housing or build more housing. We need more daycare opportunities and affordable daycare opportunities. We need ways to help people who are working through an addiction. We need all of those things before we are going to have a lot of students that can work on these projects.
So Jessica, can you elaborate a little bit on some of these other, maybe other ways that this research grant or the research program could maybe help to reach out to some of these other issues that NIFA maybe is on a periphery of NIFA, such as addiction, such as health, such as safety?
So I'll use a grant we just wrote as an example. We just got a food safety grant to do a program on food preservation and food safety within that. But the thing we were writing for is not that we want to teach food safety. It's that our community needs more access to food, and food that they can store so that when they are having a difficult time, they have something to eat. I know that it's not necessarily research, but when you ask us to build capacity, we need to understand that that's the capacity that we need. We need to start there, because right now, when I write a grant, I have to think about, is there a student that's willing to participate in this? Is there someone who we will have as an intern? Because there's a lot of times when I'm going to say, nope, I don't have anyone that can do that.
Great, thank you for your collaboration, for your comments, and for elaborating. Roxanne talked a little bit about liking the idea of having a research coordinator. I'm looking at some of the comments. The administrative capacity to manage multiple grants is an obstacle from Adrian. support a director of research position at TCUs comparable to an extension director. These are some great comments. Longer periods of funding. How do state colleges get funding to build student housing, offering daycare, other infrastructure, and are those available to the tribal colleges? These are all great comments and questions. Did somebody have their hand raised? Did I miss a hand?
Actually, I had my hand raised at one time, but I don't want to
Yes, that
interrupt what
was
you're
it,
saying.
Scott. Yes, go ahead, Scott.
Well, I think a lot of people have a lot of great ideas here, but and this is going to tie together some of the things already said, but one of the biggest problems we have right now, if I write a proposal and oddly enough, I got chewed out for getting one funded. We kind of almost have a lack of personnel to implement these. And so if I was going to submit a research proposal and I hardly have enough people to teach the courses, some idea of being able to build in capacity for a researcher is a big part, but you almost need that before you can submit the proposal. Or you need to have the proposal length or the project length longer. To do a 3-4 year project when it's going to take you a year to find somebody makes it very difficult.
Thank you for those comments. Can you add them to the chat box, Scott? Okay, we're going to move on to discussion topic 6. And I think this is our last topic, and then we can open it up for discussion. So we'd like to discuss information that should be included in the RFA grant. So if you really want to see something in the 2023 Tribal College Research Grant Program, please add it in there. I cannot make any promises that it will get included, but this is your opportunity to let us know. There are some things in legislation, such as the collaboration requirements, that I cannot do anything about. That has to be changed by Congress. But if there are other things that you would like to see, that includes different funding amounts for project types, go ahead and let us know now. You can let us know in writing. Or if you have to really want to share something that you believe should happen, you can take yourself off mute and share. So I'm seeing some great comments. So encourage new researchers, a summary page with dates, requirement documents so that the information is immediately visible. Increase the funding amount allowed for new discovery. Amber, would you like to talk about the funding amounts real quick? Do you have any suggestions?
I don't know what is like possible for a limit, but I just know it significantly, limits our staff capacity. So it's the 220,000 total, up to 3 years. It just doesn't allow us to hire a full-time person. So we're piecing multiple projects together, which it would just be a lot easier. It kind of goes back to what Steve talked about in the beginning for kind of that research scientist position. And just to have that consistency, I guess, would be really helpful.
What do you feel, can you just throw some numbers out that you feel would be better?
Well,
in terms of,
and I think it depends on what happens with the farm bill. So if the partnership, not that partnerships aren't important, but if that was removed as far as having to partner, that would free up some funding. But I would say even like up to 350,000 would help.
okay. That's great. And what about the area of expertise? Do you think that should move?
I think that amount is okay. but I don't know, we've honestly not been awarded that because we just aren't at that capacity level. But we've done the new discovery multiple times.
Great, okay. I'm also seeing numerous people say longer grant period times. I see require a strategy for data sovereignty and data governance or a justification why or why not. TEK grants were funded at the lower amount, but they would require input from a lot of people. We would need more funding to make those really robust. Okay, are there other comments that people have or would like to come off mute?
This is Heidi. Sorry to add on to Amber, I think it was the new discovery one. That's for the newer researchers, right? And is that for a 3-year thing?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just thinking, like, she said, you were asking for numbers, and I was thinking about, she threw out 350,000, and I'm wondering, like, that's not a bad number, but I was just thinking, like, let's say you pay a person, I mean, they're a researcher, right? So maybe they should make like 60, 70 a year. Okay. And then you have 20 some percent or 30, I forget what fringe. I mean, it can easily be like 100,000 a year just in salary and fringe and indirect. And then you would need the money for the supplies. So I'm just thinking you might need more than 350,000, and maybe they should be along the same lines of the area of expertise amount to, because we're honestly, I don't know how many area of expertises you issue compared to the new discoveries, but at least here where we're more probably in that new discovery, like we don't have the capacity. We need to build that capacity, and it takes money to build that capacity. And I could sure use that higher money amount, especially if I have to collaborate. So yeah, maybe
Great comments, Heidi.
Thanks.
I see Misty added in the chat box, student grants can have a webinar specifically for student researcher partners to get the word out. Amber, do you want to comment?
I just wanted to say something too, that I know some USDA programs are putting in the RFAs, like what percentage of applications were funded in the previous fiscal year. And I think that's kind of helpful too. And if you could even break that down to like how many area of expertise proposals are funded and like at a percentage. I don't know if you can provide that information, but I've seen like the SARE program put that in their RFAs, and it's just really helpful, I think, to just understand better of the competitiveness, I guess.
Thanks, Amber, for your comments. Are there any more comments? Okay.
I just want to add one thing, because I know, I'm sure I've said it to you, but I'm going to say it again. Tribal colleges are not the same as 1862s or 1890s. And it's not just because we work with tribal communities, it's because we are way behind in the amount of time and the amount of funding we've gotten compared to those institutions. So it would be really helpful if NIFA as a whole could find a way to work with that, to more fully understand that if you open up a grant to everybody, all the land grants, and it's geared for a research project that would traditionally be done by an 1862 with all of the requirements that an 1862 would fill, we're not going to be able to fill all of those.
Thanks for your comments, Jessica. I see another from Misty in the RFA link to the required document templates on the NIFA website. So current and pending cooperative agreements to streamline the grants.gov process. Okay, next slide, Prali. What NIFA can do to support TCU faculty, especially regarding large teaching loads. Are there any discussions or comments in regards to this? And I know a few have been mentioned earlier, but what NIFA can do to support TCU faculty, especially regarding large teaching loads.
I did hear one comment while I was at Falcon, and that was for faculty in most colleges, there is no incentive to do research projects because by and large, they have to add that on top of their teaching load. They have to even do it in their free time because, you know, the college can't pay them for the time it would take for the grant and take away the amount of teaching they're doing. So maybe being somehow allowing that they could hire an adjunct faculty or somehow addressing that lack of incentive would, I think, help get a lot of research grants written.
Thank you, Jessica. Are there other comments on how to support faculty regarding large teaching loads? Okay, we'll move on. Prali, next slide. I would like to open it up for any additional comments that you all would like to add or chat box messages while we're in this listening session. We are going to synthesize this data and we will be putting it on a website and we will send that out to all of you in an email to those of you who have attended here as well as all of the project directors. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact myself. My email is on the screen, Janice Woodard, Ara Staub, or Prali Chitnis. Would anybody like to make any comments before we end the session? And Prali, give it just a minute and you can put the last slide up. Would anybody like to say anything? Any hands?
Erin, this is Virgil.
Yes.
I attached an article from Westlaw on asserting tribal sovereignty in research programs. It's in the chat. People might want to take a read on that.
Thank you very much.
Erin, this is Adrian.
Yes.
I remember there was this very hot comment in the last session about the process of review, grant proposal review. And one person, I remember her very well. She brought this issue about incorporating community members as a PIs and co-PIs, you know, part of the process of submitting grant proposals. And honestly, my colleague Juan Cervantes and myself, we were thinking so much about that all the way back to Arizona. And do you have any, I remember that you mentioned that there is nothing that can stop or any kind of line that indicates that a community member, tribal member that doesn't have the master's or PhD degree shouldn't be included as a co-PI. I don't know if you remember that comment.
I do. There is not a rule or a policy or a law that says that. So anybody, if they are doing TEK knowledge, they need to be knowledgeable about traditional ecological knowledge in their community. They don't have to have a PhD or a master's or even a bachelor's degree. So, and that I think sometimes gets convoluted in the discussion, but they do not. So you don't have to have a PhD to apply for a tribal college research grant program.
Okay, because now we have this idea, it's a proposal that we're developing right now to make like a policy that a tribal member from the community should be included in any grant proposal that obviously has implications for the community, and it also has a relationship or connection with that co-PI or even PI. So in other words, we want to make it as a policy. Do you think it is something that NIFA will see as a positive thing, a complicated thing, or anything else?
Why don't we have a side conversation on that?
Okay. Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Are there any other comments before we adjourn? I want to thank everybody for taking the time to provide their comments and their feedback. This is very important while when we start to redo this RFA. So I look forward to working with all of you in the future, and we're not sure exactly when the RFA will be published. I would check back in winter months after the holiday season, and we'll have a better idea. But thank you all for your time and your input. Please, if you think of other things tonight or in the next few days, send them to us in an email. I know a few people could not attend this session and they are sending me feedback in email. As I said, we're going to try to incorporate as many of your suggestions as we can. There are some legislative requirements that we cannot do anything about. Congress has to change those, but we'll do our best to try to really build these programs going into the future. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. And I really look forward to working with all of you in the future. And thank you to ARS for being on the call, and AHEC. I think that your partnerships are really important as we move forward.
Thank you, Erin.
Have a great Wednesday.
Thank you, Erin.
Bye, you guys. Bye, Shirley.
Bye.